Fear Not, Episode 109. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Professor Bruce Lipton. Welcome, Bruce. How are you today?
I am delighted to be here with you, Billy, and so appreciate the opportunity to speak to this community.
Are you ready to fear not today?
Ready right now, ready to go.
Bruce is the author of the best-selling The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. He's also a former allopathic medical school professor and research scientist. His published research and breakthrough studies on the cell membrane revealed that the behavior and the health of the cell was controlled by the environment, findings that were in direct contrast with the prevailing dogma that genes control life. Bruce has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a popular keynote speaker and workshop presenter on topics of conscious parenting and the science of complementary medicine. Bruce, can you take a few moments to fill in those gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Well, I started out in the world as a conventional biologist and ended up as a professor in a medical school at the University of Wisconsin, teaching medical students the nature of how cells work, how they, their structure, their function, the nature of genetics, and all that, and was involved with teaching these medical students the belief that genes control our lives. This is a belief that was referred to at the time genetic determinism, a belief that the character and quality of the genes will activate themselves and in the end control the output of your life. So in other words, you don't control your biology, but your genes turning on and off control your biology. The unfortunate part about this belief system is that it turns people into victims, victims of their heredity. In other words, if the genes control our lives and we don't control the genes because they control themselves, then our lives are really based on the genes that we inherited through our family. And if there's things in your family such as cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, cardiac issues, these are attributed to genes, and being passed from family to child means that you could be the recipient of these illness-provoking genes. And I say, well, the significance about that is you don't control the genes, they control you. You didn't pick the genes, and you can't change them if you don't like the characteristics. All of a sudden, we are programmed to have no power over the expression of our own life, giving that power to the autonomous nature of genes, letting them turn on and off and control us. That was the belief system. And that's what I was teaching. But I also had the unique opportunity of cloning stem cells. Stem cells are, everybody's heard of stem cells. I'll just give you what they really are. They're embryonic cells that exist after you're born. So every one of us has embryonic cells throughout our body right now. And you might ask, well, why should that be? And this becomes very important, is that every day we lose hundreds of billions. That's like Carl Sagan almost. Hundreds of billions of cells die every day as normal attrition. The body is comprised of about 50 trillion cells. But every day we lose hundreds of billions. And if you don't replace them, then logically, how many days can you live without replacing these cells? So nature provides the adult body with embryonic cells to replace the cells that die daily every day. So I'm working with these embryonic cells. They are multipotential cells. And I was cloning them back in actually I started in 1967. This is about 20 years before most people even heard of stem cells. In fact, when I was doing this research back then, there were only a handful of us in the entire world that even knew what a stem cell was. So I had a very unique opportunity, and my research on the stem cells revealed a most amazing insight, and that is we have been programmed to believe that genes are controlling the fate of a cell. In my research with cloning, I create a culture dish starting with one stem cell that divides every 10 or 12 hours. And after about a week of cell divisions, there are about 50,000 cells in the petri dish. The significance of this cloning is that all 50,000 cells are genetically equivalent to the parent. So they're like 50,000 identical twins in a petri dish. The research that I did that blew my mind and caused me to leave the university was I would split a dish of genetically identical cells into three different culture dishes. And so each dish had genetically identical cells in it. And yet, what I did is I changed the composition of the culture medium. That's the environment in which cells live. And since I synthesize culture medium, I'm free to change some of the composition. So I create three different versions of culture medium and feed it to these identical, genetically identical cells. And in culture environment A, with the medium I prepared for A, the cells form muscle. In a second dish of cells with genetically identical cells as in the first dish, with a different environment B, the cells form bone. And in a third petri dish, again with genetically identical cells in all of the dishes, by changing the environment, these cells form fat cells. So the important question is, well, what controls the fate of the cell? Should they be muscle, bone, or fat? And the answer is not genetics. They all had the same genes. It was the environment. And all of a sudden, I started to realize that while I'm teaching medical students that genes are turning on and off and controlling our fate biologically, the cell culture studies I was involved with revealed no, the genes did not make this decision at all. The cells responded to environmental conditions, changed the environment, and you change the fate of the cells. So that's a very different approach than what I was teaching. The difference is this: genetic determinism, the belief that genes turn on and off and regulate themselves, makes us victims. In the sense, as I said, we don't control the genes and they control us. The new science about how environment controls genes, which is actually called epigenetics, that's the new science, makes us masters of our genes because we're the ones that control the environment. So if I live in this environment, I can have this effect, or if I change and move in this environment, I can have a different biology over there. So the new biology based on epigenetics takes us from victim to masters. And this is what is really important for the public to find out right now, because the primary cause of disease out there we once thought was all genetically controlled. Now we find less than 1% of all disease is actually connected to genetics. The remaining 90 plus percent of disease is totally based on the environment, and more specifically, our perception of the environment. And our perception of the environment is relayed to the cells via the nervous system. And I say, and the relevance is because I can change my perception, I can change my environment, then I'm not a victim of my genetics. I'm a master of my genetics because my actions will control the genes. So it was a radical departure from what I was teaching. And what was relevant about it, as I said, is I started to understand the nature of this science about 1970. And the new field of epigenetics wasn't officially coined until after 1990. So I had like 20 years of research on a topic that wasn't even recognized by most scientists. So I had to jump on them, which has been profoundly significant in how my life has turned out after becoming aware of this.
That is so awesome, and thank you so much for sharing. Bruce, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Yeah, well, um, a number of them. We all have different ones, but one of the significant ones that profoundly altered my life was, as I said, I was a professor at a university of Wisconsin, and I already had tenure, which is a wonderful aspect of being a professor because tenure means you have essentially a job for life. And I was in that area, and I started to recognize that the biology I was seeing long before it was recognized by the community was completely challenging to the existing understanding of biology. And at some point, I had to make a decision. Do I just stay in the system and keep teaching what I know is wrong? or do I get out of the system and have an opportunity to express a new science that is not part of the curriculum? And the significance of that, the fear is I already had tenure, a job for life, and now I'm considering, okay, walking off the job, leaving the university is like, what? You know, you have a guaranteed life job, and then you're out on the street. It's the other choice. And the reality came down to the fact that in good conscience, I knew I shouldn't really stay in the environment that I was in, because I knew that what I was teaching medical students was wrong. And it was an unfortunate situation because I was teaching the belief that people are victims of their genetics and their health and what goes on in their lives, that they have no control over it. And the fact is, no, they have total control over it. We're creating our lives. So the decision that was very critical, stay on and enjoy a job forever, or walk off the job and have no job at all. Pretty scary right there. And since, remember, this was 20 years before it was established by the science, the other fear was this: what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about all this and I walk out of a job and then have no job and I'm wrong? It's like, whoa, now you're nowhere. And this specifically applied, the fear part applied subconsciously when I realized that I had to write a book about this new science. And in part of that book, I delve into the concept of spirituality, which was not a part of regular science. And I wasn't even a spiritual person at all. But my study on these cloned stem cells revealed that the control was coming from the outside, as well as a personal identity for cells comes from the outside, which said, oh my God, our identity is not built into the cells. Our identity is part of an environmental signal that is picked up by the cells. Our biology, our bodies are almost like robotically controlled machines. That we have this biology, but what is it going to do is really based on the broadcast received by the cells of identity. So all of a sudden I start talking about spirituality, and as a scientist, that's actually forbidden. So, spirituality is not a word that comes into medical school at all, you know. And so all of a sudden I started realizing, if you write this book, Bruce, I thought to myself, I said, you will completely alienate yourself from the whole community that represents your career and your life and all that. And that was a major challenge. It was very scary to do that, because if I'm wrong, I just sabotage my entire life. So an interesting aspect of that was I ended up walking out of the University of Wisconsin, resigning a tenured position to further focus on my new science, which was not in the curriculum of a medical school. And I came up with this wonderful story about how genes and environment and all that stuff work together, which was antagonistic to the conventional story of genes turning on and off. And I remember this was so freaky was I'm so excited by this, of course, because like, God, if the way I wrote it out, it's like it makes sense out of everything in life, from how people express miracles, and how people can have spontaneous remissions from diseases, and all these wonderful things about the placebo, all these other effects were in that. And I was so excited. I couldn't wait. I needed a scientific audience to present my new ideas. So I thought, well, I would go back to the University of Wisconsin where I had this position. And because I knew the faculty there, and I thought, well, if they just let me come back, maybe I can make a presentation and get the response, see how this is going, so I can check in. Am I okay with this? So I remember they gave me an opportunity to come back, and it was what they call a Wednesday seminar, which is a lunchtime seminar. It's more of a social event than a seminar. All the faculty once a week, Wednesday, bring their lunch into the seminar room and hang out and have a lunch while some guy stands in the front and blah blah blah. And even if the guy says nothing at the end, everybody applauds. It's very polite, and that's it. So I said, oh, I got an opportunity to present this new science on the Wednesday seminar. So I show up, and the room is filled. Almost, half the people I'm very familiar with because they were all in my department and when I was there. And so I start my lecture on this new. I'm very excited about, like, wow, this is the opportunity to present this new science. And I start giving a lecture, and it was only right near about the last minute or two of the lecture that it dawned on me. I'm looking at the audience, No one ate their lunch. They didn't even open their bags. They just sat there staring at me with these big saucer eyes, like, and this was just like minutes before closing. And then I end up, giving a conclusion, and I say, "Thank you very much." And that silence, the longest dead silence I ever experienced in my life, was this moment after I said, "Thank you very much." And everybody just sat there and stared at me. And then one guy in the back of the room started to clap. He clapped absolutely twice. He went, and as soon as he did that, everybody else in the room stared at him. And that guy put his hands down, stopped clapping. And now I'm standing in the front of this room. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's saying anything. It's just a standoff. And all of a sudden, like there was an invisible conductor, everybody stood up and walked out. And I was there alone in the room. And all of a sudden I said, "Oh my God, maybe I'm crazy." I mean, not one person even stopped to ask me a question or anything. They just left me like I was some crazy guy. And that hit me. That was the fear that hit. I said, maybe you are crazy, because crazy people get very enthusiastic about these things. And my enthusiasm might just because I'm enthusiastic, but the idea is it's really crap. And that's why they walked out. And I was afraid. I was scared to death because I said, "Oh my God, am I insane?" In that I thought this was the most phenomenal new piece of science, and they just looked at it and walked out. Everyone walked out. All of my friends walked out. There were friends at one time, and I stood there in absolute fear. Maybe I'm insane. That provoked me to go to back to the University of Virginia, where I got my PhD, and talk to some of the committee members that were on my PhD committee. And one of them was a gentleman by the name of Lionel Rebin. He was the at that time one of the most important cell biologists on the planet. And I remember I sat down across from his desk, and I said to Lenny, I said, "Look, Lenny, here's my story, and I want to explain it to you. And all I want you to tell me is what's wrong with it, because apparently, maybe I'm missing something that's so obviously wrong, and then supporting an idea that it actually doesn't work." And I said, "So I just really want to know, Lenny, tell me what's wrong with my ideas." I unload the ideas. I stop. I look at him. He leans back in his chair, ponders a moment, and then says, "Well, Bruce, it's just not what we're thinking." I go, "Lenny, look, I know it's not what we're thinking. Everybody's into the genes, and I'm talking about environment control. I want to know, just tell me where I'm wrong. So if I'm wrong, I'll get off of this horse and go do something totally different instead of being an insane person." So I said, "Just tell me what's wrong." And he leaned back in his chair, and then he comes up and he said, "Well, Bruce, it's just too simple." And I unconsciously bellowed out in laughter at this. Now he really thinks I'm an insane person, laughing at this response. And I calmed myself down and I said, "But Lenny, let me explain." I said, "In my first year of graduate school, I was introduced to a principle called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is a simple statement that says the simplest hypothesis is the most likely hypothesis and should be considered before any other hypotheses." And I said, "And the fact that you said that it's too simple, I accept that." As a matter of fact, that's actually, a support. If anything else, you just supported everything I said, because the simpler idea, if there's nothing wrong with it, is the most likely outcome. And then 20 years later, that simple idea has now become the new science of epigenetics.
You, first of all, that was such an incredible story. um, but you've clearly gotten to their side and you've been vindicated, clearly. Um, so, how do you deal with fear in general? Because I'm sure this is not the only time that you've ever had fear, however big it may
Oh,
have been.
no.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but that was a kind of big one if you think about it, because I have a career track. I developed a whole life to do this job. And with my move to resign from tenure, essentially I was making a move that would prevent me to get another job because other universities will say, "Oh, you left a tenure position. What's wrong with you?" It was a very scary situation as well. As I said, it's a whole career change. And what was significant about it was that the research revealed that the environment is what controls the genetics of the cell. But what I have to add on with the research further elaborated on was that um, the environment can influence us. Simply, you walk outside and it's cold out. The environment picked up by the nervous system, the cold, will adjust your metabolism and cause your body to warm up to keep at 98 degrees. In contrast, you walk outside and it's warm out. The nervous system picks up that environmental information and adjusts your metabolism to cool you off. Perspire. So basically, it says that this biological behavior isn't controlled from within, but it's a response to the environment. But here came the part that blew my mind when I started to realize the value of it is like, well, there's a real environment, and then the nervous system picks up that information and then coordinates the functions of the body to deal with that environment, what's going on. And then I realized the biggest thing was, oh my God, the nervous system not just reads the environmental information, but it interprets that environmental information. Is this a good environment or is this a bad environment? Is this a threatening environment? So the interpretation of the nervous system is ultimately what controls the cells. So you could live in the most supported environment in the world, but if you have an interpretation that you are alone and everybody's against you, even if it's not true, you will manifest that as truth and you become the expression of your perceptions. And the significance about that is fear is a major perception for this reason. It's built into something called the biological imperative. Now, the biological imperative is a set of behaviors that all organisms have, but science doesn't even know where the heck these are programmed. And the biological imperative is the imperative or the necessity to stay alive. So if you try to kill a bacterium, even a primitive bacterium is not going to say, "Oh, okay, kill me." Even a primitive bacterium is going to make every action possible to stay alive. So this is built into every organism. And fear is an interpretation by the nervous system that there is a threat against your survival. And when you have fear in the system, it will overtake the system because survival is the most important aspect of your life. And if you have fears, then the biology is going to act on those fears to do the best it can to survive. Now, the question is, are the fears real or not? That makes the big difference. If the fears are real, someone's out to kill you, yeah, it's important to protect yourself and take every action to do so. But what if the fear is not real and justified? There's the belief. I think someone's out there to get me. I go, but maybe nobody's out there. And I say, yeah, but just because you believe it, you will actually then manifest a complete biology is actually there was somebody out there. So the fear is a primary perception for all living organisms because the fear is an expression that life is under threat, and the biological imperative's job is to keep you alive. So the expression of a fear in a system activates that biological imperative, which engages you to do every behavior that will sustain your life. And the problem is, I said, yeah, but it's all based on interpretation. What if the fears aren't real, but they're imagined? I said, it doesn't make a difference to the cells in your body. They don't know the difference between a real fear and an imaginal fear. They're just getting the signal from the nervous system, fear. So the necessary understanding is if you want to take control of your life, you have to look at where the fears are coming from and are they justifiable and real or are they beliefs and programs that you got as a younger person and then are operating from these. So it was necessary at some point to in my awareness that, oh my God, my perception, not the real environment, but the perception of the environment was controlling my genes. And therefore, anytime I held a perception that was engaged with fear or threat or something that wasn't supporting me, it took priority in my behavior because I'm now my biological imperative is pushing me like that bacterium. What maneuver can I do to stay alive? And I said, yeah, but most of these fears are unjustified. Most of them aren't even real. And yet, as I said, the biology doesn't know that. The cells don't know that. The whole mechanism is going to respond to the fear even if there is no actual reason for the fear. So you want to keep your life healthy. You have to get out of the fear. And I said, well, how does fear kill? And here's why the whole thing comes down to this. Fear means there's a threat. Threat means you have to engage in a protection response. Most fears are generally of something on the outside not supporting you, losing your job, any threats against your survival in any form, whether there's enough food, whether you have health insurance. That's a fear in itself, things like that. I go, so the relevance of fear is this. When you activate the adrenal system, which is in high school, we called it, remember, fight or flight, fight or flight. It's a system that deals with threats from the external world. And I go, well, what does it mean when you have a fear response? And it goes like this. The fear response is an indication to the biology that your life is under threat and we must now engage in protection. I said, well, what were you in before you were engaging in protection? I say, everyone's in growth. Everyone's in growth because every day we lose those hundreds of billions of cells and we have to replace them. So growth is a everyday natural necessity. I go, yeah, but what if you're in fear? A saber-toothed tiger is chasing you, going back evolutionarily when we had fear. I go, well, if the saber-toothed tiger is taking you, what are you going to do? Well, the hell with growth. You want to be able to be in protection. I say, well, it takes energy to grow and it takes energy to protect yourself. I say, when we have a fear that's life-threatening, such as that saber-toothed tiger taking us, I say, how much energy do you want to allocate to running away from the tiger? I say, logically, every bit of energy I have in the entire world, I want accessible to run away from this saber-toothed tiger. So it says, oh, when stress hormones, which are related to fear, are released into the body, they shut down all processes of the system that are using energy that are not necessary for the protection response. So growth is the first thing that gets shut down. As a matter of fact, how it shuts down is stress hormones, fear, cause the blood vessels in the gut to constrict. And I say, why? And I say, well, the gut is all the systems of maintenance and taking care of the body, providing new cells, providing nutrition, cleaning the blood, cleaning the air. I say, these are normal metabolic functions for survival. I say, yeah, but if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, at this moment, I don't want to use the energy for that. I want to allocate all of the energy toward running away from the tiger. So stress hormones cause the blood vessels to constrict, and the reason is the blood is the source of energy. So by constricting the blood vessels and stress hormones in the gut, the gut has no more energy for growth, maintenance, and all that. But if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, growth is not a big deal at this moment. So that's not a big problem. But actually, you can feel it. It's interesting because when first fear steps in for many people, there's like what they call butterflies in the stomach. And the butterflies are fluttering. I say, what's the fluttering? I go, oh, physiologically, it's the blood vessels squeezing shut. As they continue to shut, they feel like a fluttering inside the gut. And as the blood vessels in the gut shut, what does it mean? The blood is not preferentially going to the gut. When you shut the blood vessels, the blood goes to the arms and legs. I go, yeah, the arms and legs, that's what I need for the protection response to run away from that tiger. So good. I shut down growth, conserve all the energy, put it into arms and legs. And then I go, secondly, I say the immune system, which uses a lot of energy. All you have to do is reflect back on a time you were sick and realize how you had hardly any energy to get out of bed. The immune system uses a lot of energy. So I put up a situation. I say, you have a bacterial infection in the gut. And the immune system is trying to kill this bacterial infection before you get a bad case of diarrhea. And I say, well, how much energy does it take? Well, the immune system uses a lot of energy to do that. And I say, and at the same time that this infection is going on, all of a sudden you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And the question is, well, where should I allocate my energy? Should I split it to fight the bacteria and use some to run away from the tiger? And the answer is no. I want all of it to run away from the tiger. So the stress hormones do a second thing. They shut down the immune system because that's going to protect you from an internal threat. But a saber-toothed tiger is clearly an external threat. Point is this: fear is associated with the release of stress hormones. Stress hormones do two things. They shut down the growth of the mechanism, which is required because every day we lose hundreds of billions of cells. And stress hormones shut down the immune system to conserve energy. I say, wow, this sounds detrimental to life, cutting off growth and cutting off the immune system. I say, yeah, but originally the design was to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. The point is simply this: if you escape the saber-toothed tiger, then there's no more stress, no more fear, and the system goes back to normal again. So running away from the tiger may 10 minutes out of your life, boom, use all your energy in that point. But that was the old days. In today's world, the stress that we're talking about, the fears that compromise our survival are 24/7, 365. The system was never designed to have that much fear because when you put that much stress hormones chronically into the system, you are continuously debilitating yourself by not replacing the cells that have to be replaced every day. And more importantly, you shut down the immune system, which opens you up to all kinds of illnesses and diseases and all kinds of things. So the simple point is this: fear kills. Fear kills because sustained fear will shut down growth and shut down the immune system. The consequence of that is outright illness and death. So basically, fear becomes a very important part of our lives. But when we start fearing things that we have, oh, I fear I may lose my job, but you may not be losing your job. But I don't, if you fear you're losing your job, even if you're not, you're still releasing the stress hormones. So the fears that accumulate on a day by day basis are chronically debilitating the system by compromising growth in the immune system. And that's why people get sick when they're stressed and they're in fear. Or it can actually cause you to die. You can be scared to death, and that is you absolutely shut down the growth of the mechanism, and the system will die if you don't get out of that fear. So, is fear important? The answer is it's primarily important because it's the thing that engages the biological imperative. You're designed to stay alive. Fear is the threat that you won't stay alive, and that's the most important stimulus that will gauge the function of your body. So, learning to discount the fear is empowering because then you stop releasing these stress hormones, which are the cause of illness and disease and ultimately death. So then we really have to do what you're talking about, Billy, and that is we have to start recognizing where are the real fears and where are the fears that are just based on a belief, and start to get out of all the other fears. And it's very critical because that will save your life. That will enhance the character and quality of your life. If you weren't putting all your energy in for fight or flight, you could be putting it into growth and happiness and love and every other thing. But fear will override all of those and take the system over. And this is why there's so much illness on this planet today. The illness we used to think was related to genes, and we find now less than 1% of illness is actually related to genes. That over 90% of illness is lifestyle and belief that are causing these issues. And therefore, you want to recover your life. It really is incumbent upon you to go back and recognize what perceptions are you running with. And if they're fear, that's the point where we now have to rewrite those perceptions so we don't respond in a reflex behavior, which then leads to the illnesses associated with stress.
Bruce, since it is so important to change our perspective of fear, what could you recommend to us as a starting point to make that shift in perspective so that we can continue to grow, as it were?
Yeah. The first thing is to assess your fears and then distinguish what are the real fears and what are the fears strictly based on a perception that has no justification. Okay, this is very critical. A fear, for example, is, oh my God, my mom died of cancer, and my brother, my aunt, and my uncle, and this cancer is running the family. I could have a fear of cancer. And I say, well, unfortunately, that's not a justifiable fear because cancer is not connected by genes. Cancer is connected by behavior. You inherit a cancer behavior, but the significance is you can rewrite the behavior. There's no cancer gene. That's a false argument, a false belief system. There's no gene. If you have this gene, you get cancer. Uh, as a matter of fact, an important point is most women out there are scared to death because they may have a gene called the BRCA1 gene, the cancer gene for breast cancer, a cancer gene for breast cancer, misnamed, of course. And I go, that fear of, oh my God, to the woman who, my mother had it and she died, my grandmother had it, and women in the family had this gene and they're going to die. And just you do a genetic analysis, and the first thing you get is, oh my God, I got the gene. And the next thing, your whole life is now, I'm going to get the cancer. It's a fear. And the fact is, it's totally not founded on reality. The cancer is not caused by a gene. As I said, the BRCA1 gene recognized to be the big cancer gene. I say, how many women that have that gene actually get the cancer? The answer is about 50%. And we focus on the 50% of the women that got the cancer because they had the gene. We say the gene caused the cancer. And I go, yeah, but no one's talking about how about the 50% of the women that have the gene and don't get the cancer? And all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. Possession of the gene, by definition, does not cause the cancer. And all of a sudden you realize that a woman says, oh, I have the gene. And immediately she has fear, I'm going to get cancer. And then the important part about that is we can get into we can manifest the fear if that's what's on our mind. When our mind focuses on fear, we manifest a reality that complements that fear. If I have a fear that I'm going to get breast cancer, I don't even need a bad gene. I can manifest breast cancer based on the fear and a concept called epigenetics, where our perceptions are controlling our genes. The perception I can get cancer is enough to manifest cancer. So the question is, well, is that a valid perception? And I'm going, right now, understand, no, the gene does not cause cancer, that it's lifestyle and behavior and dealing with anger. These are the issues that cause cancer. I say, why is it relevant? Well, if you understand these issues, you don't have to have the cancer. You can deal with the lifestyle and all those other things. You have control. But if you have a fear that I'm out of control, the gene is going to give me a cancer, then what you're living with is a belief, a perception. And since the function of the mind is to make our perceptions real, if you have a perception of fear of having breast cancer, you can automatically manifest breast cancer with no genetic propensity toward that at all, completely. You could be the most genetically normal person in the world and manifest breast cancer just because of the fear of it. The fear is an image in your mind. Oh my God, I see myself with breast cancer. I going, the function of the mind is to take the belief and turn it into reality. If that's what you're focusing on, then the chemistry coming from the nervous system is the chemistry that will produce a cancer. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, you manifested a fear because of your fear. And this is why it's necessary. I mean, if there's a guy in front of you with a gun and he's going to say, I'm going to kill you, that's a legitimate fear. I'm going to deal with that. But if it's a fear, well, oh my God, I could get sick and then I'll lose my job. Then I'll live on the street. And I go, wow, well, that is possible, but it doesn't have to be. But if you focus on it every day, that this is a reality for you, sure as heck, you're going to get sick, lose your job, and you'll have a real reason to deal with that fear. So fear can be real, or fear can be a suggestion. But if you take that suggestion and repeat it enough, it will manifest itself because the nature of our biology is creative. Take your responses and beliefs about the world and manifest a biology that complements that. If you live in fear, then you're going to have reasons to believe that because fear will be part of your life at that point.
Bruce, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, how can they do that? Simple. BruceLipton.com. All of the things that we're talking about here, Billy, are on this website, and articles and videos and interviews and all kinds of things like that. So it's a complete database of how to empower your life using the new science of epigenetics, which is how perception and environment control our lives. Knowing how that works, then you can manipulate your perceptions and manipulate your environment to create what you want versus the one that your subconscious, living in fear, may have created that you don't want. And we have to recognize that the subconscious programming is more powerful, a million times more powerful than the conscious programming. There are two parts to the mind. People don't recognize them as two independent parts. There's the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is creative. It has wishes and desires. That's the one where you can say, this is what I want. Happiness, love, joy, health, harmony, whatever. That's conscious wishes. And operating from that mind, you can manifest those. The subconscious mind is downloaded with behavioral programs. The subconscious mind is just a record playback device. It's not creative. You learned how to walk when you were less than 2, and that became a program. And thank God it's a program, because whatever age you, 70 plus, you're still walking around without having to relearn it, is because you created a habit which is in your subconscious mind. Well, there are processes like that, but there are other things that can become habits. Fear, it can be a habit. I am concerned that people are going to take advantage of me, take my, threaten me. And I say, where'd you get these beliefs from? I say, most of it occurred before age 7. And they weren't our beliefs, but they were the beliefs of our parents, our family, and our community. I said, well, then how did those beliefs become our beliefs? And the answer, and this is very profoundly important, Billy, is that the first 7 years of a child's life, the brain is operating at a lower vibrational frequency called electroencephalograph activity, EEG. The brain is operating at a frequency called theta when a child is 7 or under. And theta, characterized by imagination. And then you go, oh, yeah, look at kids. They ride a broom, but in their mind, that broom is a horse. Every real aspect of a horse is expressed riding this broom. The mother says, give me the broom back. And the child looks at the mother like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a horse, because theta that's how it works. More importantly, theta is hypnosis. And the reason why the child's brain for 7 years is in hypnosis is fundamentally very important. And that is this: genes can control the mechanics and development and nature of your physical biology. But genes can't carry behaviors, complex behaviors. And there's a good reason, because complex behaviors change over time. Genes are like consistent. So I can't program a behavior for a future time. That behavior is going to manifest based on the conditions at the time. So when a child is born, there's no behavioral genetics of how to be a member of a family and a member of a community. A child is born with a blank slate. And yet, the first thing the child has to learn is, what are the rules of being in this society and being in this family and being a functional member? And I say, well, how do you know the rules? You don't read a book as an infant. Your mind is in theta, hypnosis. You learn the rules by observing your mother, your father, your siblings, the community around you. You observe them in a state of theta, hypnosis, and their behaviors become downloaded into your mind. So the fundamental programs in your subconscious mind are not derived from you, your life experiences, your wishes and desires. They're downloaded from other people. And if their behaviors, and 70% of the behaviors that we get from them are not supporting us, that are actually disempowering and limiting or self-sabotaging, 70% of the downloaded programs of observing your family and your community are programs of disempowerment. And I say, yeah, but the conscious mind isn't working at those first 7 years. So whatever program came in was directly observed from the world and directly downloaded in the subconscious. And you go, yeah. So the conscious mind is you, your spirit. It's creative. It has wishes and desires. It's the mind that gives you hope of what you're looking for. The subconscious mind is just a database of programs. Yet the fundamental programs in the database didn't come from you. They came from your family and your community. So if there's a fear in your family, a fear of X or Y or whatever it is, and you're an infant in that family, you will automatically be programmed with the same fear. And then you say, yeah, but these fears are in my subconscious, but I'm going to run my life with my conscious mind. That's the creative one. I go, Well, you can do that, but it's very difficult for this reason. Consciousness can be used in thinking. I said, what does that mean? I said, well, consciousness, I could consciously do something out in the yard. Okay, I consciously want to plant a tree here. And I said, that's really cool. That's my conscious wish and desire. But the subconscious just has programs in it. It's the autopilot. And it says if consciousness is busy, then whatever the functions are carrying out at the time, walking, driving a car, talking with somebody, if the conscious mind goes inside thinking, then the behavior is now not controlled by conscious mind, it's busy. That's when the subconscious programs come in. They're the default, they're the autopilot. So every time you are thinking a thought, so I say, hey, Billy, what are you doing Wednesday at 2 o'clock? If you actually going to answer that question, the answer isn't on the outside. The answer is inside your head somewhere. So your thoughts, I ask the question, what are you doing? Your mind consciousness goes inside looking like a Rolodex in there. Where the heck am I doing on that Wednesday? And I say, oh, but the moment the consciousness went inside, by definition, it's not paying attention to what's going on outside. So if you're driving a car and all of a sudden you have a thought, then the consciousness is no longer driving the car. Consciousness is inside looking for an answer. I say, well, fortunately, the car doesn't crash. And the reason is this because the moment your consciousness is letting go of the control, the subconscious as autopilot kicks in. And the subconscious is a million times more powerful a computer than the conscious mind. It can drive the car better than you can do it. As a matter of fact, if your car is skidding and about to go into an accident, guess what? Your conscious mind is shut off. And every movement that occurs after that is the rapid, accelerated movement that's available through subconscious. Conscious mind is a very slow processor. I mean, if you're in the car and it's starting to skid and you're controlled by conscious mind, the first part of the skid would be, oh, just observing it, almost being paralyzed. Oh my God, the car's going out of control. If you stayed in that conscious mind, you'd be in a lot of trouble. But the system knows better. It says, no, the moment the car gets out of control, shut off the conscious mind, the creative mind, the slow mind, and engage the subconscious, the faster mind with programs which will automatically cause you to hit the brake, turn the wheels, and do all these things without even thinking. So we come down to a conclusion here that gets very critical. It says that we have two minds. The conscious mind is creative, and the conscious mind also can think. And when the conscious mind is thinking, then behavior is controlled by programs that are downloaded in the subconscious, but then recognizing most of those programs are disempowering, and these programs came from other people. You're not even engaging your own behavior. So it's interesting. In my classes, I give an example to people. I say, you probably knew a friend when you were young, you were very close, you knew your friend's behavior very, very well, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day you see your friend has the exact same behavior as their parent, which amuses you, and you offer this. You say, "Hey, Bill, you're just like your dad." And I say, then you back away from Bill. Bill goes totally ballistic. How the heck can you compare me to my dad? And I say, that one story, which almost everybody in the audience responds to and laughs because they're familiar with it. I said, this is the most profound story I can tell you right now, and it's this. Everyone else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. He's the one that says, how can you make that comparison? But everybody else can see he behaves like his dad. Then the question is, why doesn't he see it? And the answer is, because when he's playing those behaviors, which were programmed by observing his dad and they're in the subconscious, why is he playing them? And the answer is because his conscious is busy at the time. And then here comes the number that will blow people's minds, and that is the conscious creative mind has been determined to operate about 5% of the day, with the subconscious program mind controlling 95% of our behavior and our biology. And I say, why is that relevant? And I said, the 95% of the day, most of the behaviors you're expressing aren't behaviors that come from your conscious wishes, desires, aspirations mind. 95% of the day, you're playing those programs, 70% of which are negative and disempowering. You're playing these programs that you downloaded in your subconscious because that's the autopilot. And then I say, but because the conscious mind is busy in thought, It's the conscious mind that's not observing the behavior that's coming out of the subconscious program. And if these programs, and the vast majority are negative and disempowering, that means that 95% of days you could be sabotaging your entire life and you're the only one who doesn't see it because your conscious mind was engaged in thought. And and when the subconscious is controlling it, that's where the biological imperative comes in, and that's where the fears of programming fears. What are you to be afraid of? What causes you fear in this world? I say, well, there are things you personally experience, but there are things that you've downloaded to be afraid of from living in your family and community. And these are the fears that, because 95% of the day you're operating from those fears, they will take over your biology and they will alter your behavior, alter your health. Fear kills. That's basically, as I said, the biggest cause of disease is not genetics; it's the programming, and that programming is very negative. So, uh, what is fear good for? Well, if there's a real reason, it's going to save your life. But if it's a suggested reason, a possible reason, but you don't have any information to say that it's actually there. uh, if you live in that fear and it's not there, the cells don't know it's not there. The cells are living in the fear you're sending them. So you could live in the most perfectly supported environment in the world, have a fear of being threatened. Your cells will live under that fear, create behavior, shut down the growth, shut down the immune system, get into the whole protection posture, and there was no reason for it because it was only a suggested fear. And this is what we have to recognize. How much of the fear is actually real and how much are we projecting? Because when we understand that, we realize, oh my God, we are debilitating ourselves with the projections of fear that don't even exist or not affecting us. And yet our biology doesn't know whether fear is real or not. It just buys the message coming from the nervous system. And if the nervous system says fear, then the body's going to engage in those responses, even if there is no reason for fear at all.
Bruce, what parting advice would you like to leave for us today? You've given us so much already, but uh, what more could you
Yeah.
possibly give us today?
Okay. The first thing is really what you have to do is assess your own belief system at this moment. You have to say, what are the things that are scaring you? And what are the things that, control your behavior that you don't want to be in your life? You have to assess yourself. You have to look back into your own self and say, well, I have a fear of this and I have a fear of that. And then I have to find out the next question. Is there a real grounding? Are these fears founded on something real, or are they founded on a projection of something that may be real? This is very profoundly different. What may be real that's a potential, but it's not there. What is real is right in front of your face. But most of us are living in the projection. So it says whether the fear really exists or not, the projection is going to manifest the consequence of it. So it's really necessary to let go. One of my fears? My fear was when, oh my God, if I publish this book on the new biology and include the concept of spirituality and the new insights of epigenetics, what will my fear be? I said, I lose my whole career and a standing in a world that I worked on to become a recognized contributor to the field of science. And all of a sudden I say, wow, what's the fear? I will be lost. I will have nothing. And that actually hit me about 20 seconds after I turned in my resignation to the chairman of the department. I walked out of the room and all of a sudden says, "Holy crap, what you just do? You have no job." And I had to start to deal with that issue and say, no, I prefer to have control over my life and live in harmony and be in integrity. And that job was not doing that. If I go to the outside, I will find a community that will support me in this. And I wrote that book, but I had to rewrite my subconscious beliefs about that invalidation that I anticipated because that I started the book three separate times, got about halfway through the book, The Biology of the Belief, And then it petered out, and I lost interest. I couldn't continue anymore 3 times. And then finally, a friend of mine who helps in these different kinds of belief change modalities, we did an assessment of what are my subconscious beliefs using muscle testing, kinesiology. And the result revealed that my subconscious mind was saving me from the belief that if I do this, I will be an invalidated, lose my career, and be nothing. And my subconscious mind said, "No, Bruce, don't write this book." And so unconsciously, it kept sabotaging my book. There are processes which you can rewrite the beliefs, which I engaged in an energy psychology modality. I changed that belief, and the beautiful part is using some of these modalities like the one I used. It took a 10-minute process to rewrite the subconscious program, and I let go of it. And the fun part was this: in the process of saying, well, instead of that belief of fear, how would you like this book to be written? And it was interesting because I said I wanted to be fast because I've already been wasting a lot of time. I want it to be easy because I don't want to struggle anymore. And in fact, why not have it be fun? I programmed that into my subconscious with this technology. A few months later, the book was finished. I did this 10-minute, it was a 10-minute process to after getting what I wanted down, 10 minutes to rewrite the program. I forgot that I even did the process after a few months. And I remember distinctly it was on the reviewing the final manuscript the second time. This is the last read through. When I get to the end of the book, I'm forwarding it to the publisher, and I'm now on the last page. Read the last page, get down to the last sentence, period, sit up straight and go, wow, that, that was kind of fast and it was easy and it was a lot of fun. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, those were the words that I programmed how the book should come out. I even forgot that those were the words, and my system brought it right out. The moment the book was done, it was fast, it was easy, it was fun, and that was a program. And that was a program that replaced, what if you write this book and lose your career? And the thing was, we can override your fear by putting in programs that change them. And this becomes the more important part of our discussion, Billy. And I know there are time limitations, but the significance is there are very specific ways to write programs and put them into the subconscious. Let me just back up 1 second so that people out there understand this. I said 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious because that's how much time the conscious mind is in thought. And I say, well, why is this relevant? Because I said, look, you were programmed from the last stage of pregnancy, the last trimester, through age 7. So if I said to you, hey, what program did you get when you were 1? Oh, no. What program did you get when you were 0? You go, I have no idea what the hell the programs are in my life. And these programs are controlling my life. And I go, here's the conclusion part that is necessary for this audience, and that is this. You don't know what the programs are. Most of them, they went in before consciousness was even engaged. So I said, well, how would you know what the programs are? And I go, and this is a simplification. Since 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious program, then it's simple. Your life is a printout of your programs. And I go, so what does that mean? I say, well, look at your life and recognize a simple fact. Everything you want and desire that comes into your life comes in because there's a program to accept that. But in contrast, everything you work hard at, everything you have to put a lot of effort into, everything you sweat over to make it happen. The question is, why are you working so hard to make something happen? And the answer is because inevitably there's a program in the subconscious that does not support that end. So I need people out there to understand is your fears will be preventing you from accomplishing something. You say, yeah, but I don't know what these fears necessarily are. And I say, well, look at it at the things you're trying to get that you haven't been able to get. It's not the universe preventing you from getting them. It's your own subconscious acting 95% of the day without you even being aware of it is controlling that. We perceive ourselves as victims of the world. I say, no, no, you're victims of your program. And when you understand that, that's empowering because it says, I don't have to change the world. I just need to change the program. And that's where self empowerment will come from. And the biology belief really goes in and discusses the nature of this and how you got the programs and what you can do to change them.
That is I mean, that's a lot to take in, but it's so amazing. Thank you so much for that advice. And Bruce, this has been probably one of the best shows I've ever done. It took you 5 months to get here, but I'm so glad you did. You joined us today. And
Well,
I,
thank you for your patience, Billy, and waiting until we could find a spot, and it's really neat. I mean, look at me as your example of your fear program. Here I was dropping out of the university with the first instant, 10 seconds after walking out of the chairman's office with that resignation, I was hit with the biggest fear of my world. It's like, God, I have no job. I have nothing. And yet my intention was to bring out this new science. And now look at me today. I have my own job. I'm even better. I'm far better off than being a faculty member at university. I'm freely independent. I can run my own life. And so, guess what? That fear turned around to manifest the best existence I have in my life. And people are going to start facing this because some of these fears regarding money and available resources and things that we normally use are changing day by day in this world, forcing us to consider other opportunities. The biggest limitation on people seeking a new opportunity is the fear of letting go of the old one before getting the new one. It's like, uh-oh, limbo land. I say that fear will prevent you from stepping out of a situation you don't even like to seek a situation that you could thrive in. And I say, why is that? And I say, fear. I, I have this. If I let go of it, maybe I won't even have that. And that is the biggest stumbling block in the evolution of us as individuals on this planet. The fear of change, because you know what you have, even if it sucks and you don't like it, at least I know what it is. I don't know what the unknown is. So I'll stick here in this very abusive relationship because I have a fear of what would happen if I got out. And your program, Billy, becomes so fundamentally important to the community because the community says, look, our biggest issue is not genetics. It's not the real threats that we frequently perceive. It's just our beliefs. And if we can rewrite those limiting beliefs, then we are given empowerment to move to a better place. I am in a far better place that I wouldn't have even thought of 10 seconds after I walked out of that chairman's office. But the reality was, I was on a mission. I'm going to do this. I had a vision. And then I created a new world based on the new vision versus the vision of, oh my God, my colleagues are going to invalidate me. I put a new vision in and manifest it. And that's what I want people to really recognize. This is a time of change. The position you're in may not be stable. And I say that of course will generate lots of fear. And then I'm going, yeah, but consider this possibility. There are so many opportunities to do something you really like versus the one that you think is the one I have to do. And overcoming fear is the only real way to get to that new existence. And so thank you, Billy, for bringing this up as a forum, bringing this up as an opportunity for those people out there to say, is my fear real? Is my fear killing me? Oh yeah, biologically, I just gave some of that information. Can I change my fears? And the answer is absolutely. But if you don't, then you have a program you're going to play from here until the end. And the only way you can change the program is you have to rewrite those beliefs.
I want to thank you again, Bruce, for coming on the show. And you're so amazing and so generous. And just thank you so much for the abundance of wealth of knowledge that you've shared with us today. Truly, thank you.
Well, again, my appreciation because for everyone who changes their belief out there and makes a more positive situation, the world evolves to a higher level, and that's what we're looking for. There is a reality, something called heaven on earth, and we can manifest this. Just a last little sidebar. As I said, we've been programmed. We operate 95% from the program, so our life is a printout of our programs. There's one time in your life where you stop playing the program and your whole world changed instantly. The moment you stop playing the program, it's sort of equivalent to taking the red pill in the movie called The Matrix. The Matrix is not a science fiction movie, it's a documentary. Everyone has been programmed, and there's such a thing as a red pill. There's an opportunity to get out of the program. So I'm just going to leave with this. science has recognized that when we fall head over heels in love with someone, the immediate fallout from that is a period where we stay mindful. That's a term that means we don't default to the subconscious. When we're mindful, we operate completely from the conscious mind, which is creative wishes and desires. I go, look, before you met the special person in your life, you could have said life sucks, everything, blah, blah, blah. And then you meet this person. 24 hours later, you wake up and you go, God, I love this place. It's heaven on earth. Everything's so beautiful. I'm in love. Even the job I don't like is not so bad. I go, wait, 24 hours before, and your whole life up to that moment was a piece of crap. And then you meet this one beautiful person, and they come into your life, and 24 hours later, it's heaven on earth. I said, how did crap turn to heaven? And the answer was, it's the one time in your life you stop playing the program. And if you recognize that, then you can see the value of what is the program contributing and what's the difference between my wishes and desires. The answer is you manifested the wishes and desires in what I call the honeymoon. And when you revert back to the programming, your old life will return just the way it was before. And so I say, that one period called the honeymoon is what would life be like if you didn't have those negative programs? And that is an expression. That's what life would be like, a honeymoon.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.